Did you move to Los Angeles or did you grow up here, Andrew?
No, I grew up in Illinois, and I moved in 2005.
Did you grow up in like a rural part of Illinois or
northern
city?
suburbs of Chicago.
Willamette or?
Glenview, Northbrook.
Oh, okay.
You know, where Ferris Bueller's from.
Oh, nice.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Okay.
And yeah, I moved in 2005 to pursue my career in filmmaking.
Did you go to school for filmmaking or writing?
No, I wanted to go to USC or UCLA, but it was out of state, it was really expensive. So also, parents didn't really approve, you know, wanted their son to get a real job. So I went to the University of Illinois and I made films, short films over there. And I entered film festivals there too.
So you had another major? You were?
Yeah, I majored in psychology, and yeah, I was, you know, I'm still very interested in psychology, and I like to put that in some of my writing.
So with these short films, would you enter them in contest, or you were just right now doing, or at that time, just doing it for yourself?
I was doing it for myself, but the festival was a good like deadline so that I could, you know, complete it by a certain time, usually at the end of the semester. And yeah, I would just do it to learn, but the, you know, getting an audience at the end was always great. So
you came out here in 2005, so the economy was doing well, social media was just sort of like, I think what MySpace was going and...
Right, well I think Facebook was still there, but...
Facebook, okay, sorry, yeah Facebook too.
Just started.
Just started, okay. So things are looking good, you're coming out here. What was your plan? Were you hoping to make films? Were you hoping to get a job in television?
Well, you know, I wanted to get a job in TV, but, you know, kind of have it be a temporary thing. And I wanted to make some money and save up and have enough money to fundraise, you know, to fund my own short films. And I was going to make, you know, feature films, you know, independent feature films, and you know, just have enough money saved up. And the original plan was to save enough money to do that.
So were you? At what point did you decide you wanted to be in the film industry? Was back home in Illinois?
Actually, that was at a young age. I was 9 years old. My family had just gotten a camcorder for my older brother's graduation, and just naturally we all started to make videos, my brothers and I. And you know, they didn't get hooked. I got hooked. And I started making short films by myself with the camcorder for a couple years. And then eventually I made my first longer short film in senior year of college, or senior year of high school, I should say.
So then when you came to LA, did you apply for temporary jobs, or did you look for a job in film and television as crew or whatever?
Well, in college, I actually I got a job at, or actually I got an internship at Malcolm in the Middle. It was through one of my brothers had a hookup, and there was a good like entry to get in. It was the writer's office. And while I was there, I also applied for other internships, and one actually became a job, and it was working on an independent feature. And yeah, so that was kind of my first gig, was already in college. And then after college, I actually moved out here and started looking for work, and I ended up getting onto Prison Break, season 1, and the post-production department. And that was also through my other brother. You know, he had a hookup with a producer on a different show, and I totally messed up that interview.
Oh, why? Sorry to interrupt, but what was it?
Well, I think I just hadn't come out of my shell. I was really kind of shy during the interview, and I didn't really know anything about what I was applying for. So I went in there, and I remember I asked them like, how long are the days? And they were like 12 hours. And I was like, whoa, isn't that what I signed up for? So what my producer, my friend, my brother's friend said was, you know, he can't, if there's a few applicants and I'm like, number 2, I'm not the top pick, he could argue for me and kind of push me in, but I was like at the bottom of all the applicants that they interviewed, so he couldn't really do much for me, you know, even though I had that connection.
I always have this theory, and I've read about it, that sometimes the people that seem super confident and amazing in interviews are actually the worst person for the job, and it's the one that's the quieter one. But anyway, that's a whole psychological debate on who would be a better worker. But so you decided to finally get a job, though, doing obviously something. You have several credits. I mean, you have an impressive list of credits of working on different shows as accounting and different crew like that?
Yeah, I worked on Prison Break Season 1, House, Sarah Connor Chronicles, what else? Curb Your Enthusiasm, Eastbound and Down. So these are some really big name shows. Yeah. And I was working on all these different departments, writer's office, accounting, production, post-production. And I really got to see how the different departments were, functioned and how they were different from each other.
Well, you talked about something, and I hope you're okay if we touch on that, and that is compromises one makes about selling out. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of people in my position, a lot of people who want to make it in film or TV, entertainment industry, they don't really think about, they think about the money aspect, but not in terms of making it. So, they have a plan of, I'm going to work 3 jobs, or I'm going to become a waiter or waitress and do auditions on the side until I make it, or I'm going to take a bunch of screenwriting classes and do a little side hustle here until I make it. But often they don't actually consider what that means. What does making it mean? Would they be okay with, becoming a staff writer on a TV show, or doing rewrites for some production company on a script that they didn't start writing? I think a lot of people don't actually think about that. And so I know a lot of people who unfortunately are staff writers, or they're doing a bunch of rewrites. They're making the money, but they're also really unsatisfied because it's not really what they intended to do. And I think it's something that really should be given a lot of thought, because unfortunately, some people want to be fulfilled artistically, and I think you really need to ask yourself, well, how much am I willing to throw that away, or am I not really willing to throw that away at all? Some people want to get paid by the industry, but there's a cost to that too sometimes. So that's why I always encourage people to, if there's another way to make money that's really easy, to try to pursue that and try to be as independent as they can from the industry, if you're someone who wants to be independent. Now, I know some people who are staff writers, or they get hired to do rewrites, who are completely happy and satisfied. But you have to ask yourself, which one am I? Am I someone who's going to be happy getting hired by Hollywood, or am I going to be someone who is just going to take the money, but I'm going to kind of grit my teeth doing all these rewrites or things that I don't want to do?
Yeah, sometimes I think too, the only way you'll know is if you're lucky enough to take a job that pays you well, but you're working 15, 20 hours, or you're always on call, or you never get a weekend. And then you finally realize, yeah, you know what, this isn't for me. Sometimes I think you need that.
Yeah, some people, you have to kind of try it out first. I mean, it happened to me.
Did it?
I worked in TV, and I really wasn't sure. At first I thought maybe I could get a job in TV because there's more money to be made in TV. Maybe I could do that on the side, and then I could get promoted and become a staff writer and branch out and do movies. But TV is tough. I mean, TV's, there's a lot that you don't get to decide on. I mean, I just remember being, on some shows, even where to go for lunch. I couldn't even, it was a compromise decision. I couldn't even choose where I wanted to eat for lunch, So I was doing all these things over and over again that I didn't really sign off on. And by the end I said, you know what, I gotta take a shot. I gotta leave the steady paycheck and pursue my own thing. And, if I come up with anything else on the side that's easy, let's try to do that too.
I think some people, they thrive in those corporate group settings. Sometimes I'll see people at lunchtime, a big group of people, then I'm like, yeah, they look like they're coming from some studio job or something within
Right.
the industry, advertising, whatever, and they look perfectly happy, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I think for some people, they can do that, and I think again, some people can't, and that's not a bad thing. If you want to do something independent, it's just harder, I think, to get that
Right.
paycheck.
It is harder to get that paycheck, but keep in mind that, you know, the downside is that someone who's getting that paycheck, you know, they might not be as fulfilled artistically as, you know, someone who is, or someone who is doing it the independent route, making what they want to make. So I think you got to ask yourself, which one am I, you know? And if it takes, you know, some time, you know, you have to try it out to see, you know, just try it out and see, but don't take too long, you know, don't get stuck is what I'm, you know, what I suggest to all my friends in the industry who are about to pursue what they want to do.
Are your parents okay with you now that you moved to LA, or?
Well, they just moved to LA too.
Oh, they did?
So,
oh, great.
Yeah,
okay.
but they were, you know, we had, they were in Illinois for a while, so, you know, I had to call them and everything every week, you know. But yeah, I helped them move to LA. And yeah, I think now that they, you know, now that they found out that I'm doing something that's actually making money, renting out the DeLorean, yeah, now that they're you know, less worried. I think a parent's could be worried if their kid is is doing some sort of artistic venture that's not traditional, because there's, you know, there are a lot of question marks and nothing is guaranteed as much as, you know, a steady paycheck. But even that's not really guaranteed either. So I remember a story about, well, one of the stories that I tell is I actually met a famous actor's father on an airplane in the 90s. And it was the first time I'd been on an airplane by myself. And I was flying from LA to Chicago. This guy started talking to me, and we started talking. He was this older gentleman, and he was starting to say, you know, he was talking about his son a lot. And I started to listen. You know, I didn't mind. It was my first time, so I was just listening to him. And I thought he was really cool because he really supported his son emotionally, even though his son was kind of struggling at the time as a struggling actor. And I made sure I, you know, remembered the name, and I checked out his name on IMDb over the course of the years. And his son is now one of the biggest names in comedy. So
wow.
Right. So, and
cool.
I remember specifically asking him, you know, do you think your son's ever going to make it? And he kind of like shook his head and said, nah, you know, not because he didn't believe in his son, but more because he thought Hollywood was this, you know, giant sinkhole where everybody went to die, you know. And no, his son, you know, he said no, but he said he really supported him emotionally because, you know, his son had the courage to do, you know, what he wanted to do, and he respected him for that. So, I mean, that's support from a parent that you know, is really great, that I wish all parents had.
That's a cool story.
Yeah, yeah. I almost don't want to say his name.
Yeah, no, we won't say his name just to keep his anonymity, but I think that's a really cool story.
He's very famous.
And it's interesting that you got to sort of see, I don't know at what level he was at then on IMDb in terms of how many credits?
He had he had one part on a TV show that was like a guest spot, and he had one line in a movie. That was it.
Wow.
And then now he's one of the bigger names. He was the star of his own TV show.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I always find it interesting to see someone's transgression of, you know, how they were in the beginning, and then sometimes it's more exciting than to actually think what their lives might be like now.
Right.
Because sometimes I know people talk about they wish they could go back to those times. I was watching something on the two Steves, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Steve Wozniak just talked about you can't really get those times back when they were building a computer in the garage. You can't get those times when it just seems like it's nothing, but it really was part of the journey. But you know, so maybe some of these actors feel the same, or filmmakers.
Yeah, sometimes the struggle and the pain is actually what makes you into a better person, or you learn from it, or you put it into your artwork. And you know, sometimes you can use that and really make something great. You know, like Apple, like what the two Steves did. And then, you know, once you've made it, it's like then there's a different problem where you can't really fail as much as you did before in the past. You know,
Right, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of scrutiny.
Right.
How many years were you in TV?
I started, once I officially moved here, which was 2005, I did it for about 6 years. And yeah, I worked on Prison Break. That was the first show. And then the last show was Eastbound and Down in North Carolina. I actually went to North Carolina to shoot that film, shoot that TV show. And yeah, I definitely had different reactions on both shows. Season 1 of Prison Break was really, really exciting. It was the hit show, and I was really glad to be a part of it, that I was finally making money in LA. And everybody, all my friends were calling me and they're like, oh yeah, I saw the show last night and what's gonna happen? And it was really exciting, and I was really open to doing whatever the producers wanted me to do, whatever my bosses wanted me to do. And it just felt great being a part of a team. And even though I wasn't involved creatively, I was like, yeah, this is, I've made it. I'm gonna, maybe I'll be, writing a show one day, and I'll have my name in the credits. But then, flash forward 6 years later, I was actually working on Eastbound and Down in North Carolina, and I loved all the people that I worked with. I really connected with them, and they were great. Just that I felt differently on that last show. I was really unfulfilled, and there was so many things happening, and all the days we couldn't. I was in accounting then. All the days were, all the paperwork was getting high, and I didn't really have time for my writing. I would always go home and fall asleep at the computer, and it would really bother me. And I thought, how many more years am I going to be doing this? And I remember specifically, there was a sizzle reel of the show where they cut together all the different, all these highlights before the season started of the show for the cast and crew, to get them excited for the upcoming season. And I watched it, and I didn't really feel anything. And I looked at other people who didn't have anything to do with the show creatively. They were my level or in a different department. And they were really excited, and they were just like, so they were saying that all the stuff that they went through was worth it because of what they saw on the sizzle reel. And I just felt like, I'm working on someone else's show. I didn't really feel anything. Maybe it's time for me to get out. It's I've kind of lost that. It's kind of gotten old now. It's time for me to move on and try to work on my own show or my own movie. So that's when I decided to leave.
Do you think the recession had anything to do with that too? Because you started when the economy was doing fairly well, and then...
I don't think so, because nowadays there's all these different shows. Shows are abundant now. Whoever says that there's no work in Hollywood and it's all competitive, they don't know all the shows that exist that they'll never see on all these different platforms. So I don't think, there was always a show, so that I don't think that was the case for me. It was just my own personal fulfillment. I wasn't feeling it.
Right. So then did you say, did you give yourself any kind of deadline? You say, I'm gonna leave this job and do something that's, more piecemeal or part-time, and then work on my own stuff?
I did try to give myself a deadline, but I'm also really bad at deadlines too. I've noticed it's one of my big weaknesses. I usually predict stuff like, I'm gonna get it done by this time, and then, I'm still trying to figure that out. But I did take some, writing classes, and I felt like it was time for me to, start writing my own feature film. And I knew that there was going to be a big learning curve, that, I was going to take some time. So I was ready to do it. I was ready to, if it took years, I was going to do it.
What was some of the most exciting things about these writing classes? Like, what were some things that you thought you knew about filmmaking, so, story structure, and then you were pleasantly surprised to learn other things?
Well, I think the best writing class I took was a scene writing class. I learned a lot in that class because the teacher basically said that, the problems that are probably present in your screenplay are probably going to also be present in your scenes. So why don't we look and, write a bunch of scenes, and we could learn really quickly. We'll bring in a scene a week, and we'll all get feedback. And I think I learned the most in that class, where I was just every week bringing in a new scene, learning what I was doing wrong, and hearing feedback from others. It also trained me to learn how to receive feedback too. I remember in my first class I was so nervous, and it was a big pile of scenes, and we hadn't critiqued anybody's scene yet. My teacher picks one, and it's mine. He's like, "Who wrote, exterior desert day," or whatever? And I was like, "Oh man, this is me." But I remember being so nervous hearing about what everybody else thought. But by the end of that class, I was like, "Yeah, let's, give it to me." I was open to feedback and learning. So that class really did change me, and I think it's probably like the best class that I've ever took.
What have you learned working in television that could be helpful to people just arriving in LA, new writers?
That writing is, if you want to be a writer with some sort of power, you got to end up in TV. For some reason, the way it's structured in TV, the writers have all the power. So the writers come up with the story. They really focus on story, which is why all the good writers are going into TV, and the film industry is kind of suffering a little bit. But all the good writers go into TV. They figure out the story, and directors come in each week to direct the episode, but they don't have as much power as the showrunner who's in the writer's office. If you're in film, it's complete opposite. It's like it's all about the director. The writer doesn't really have so much power as in TV, and a writer doesn't even have to show up to set sometimes. I've been on a feature film that the writer showed up on like the last day, and they were like, "Oh yeah, here's craft service," So if you want to be a writer and you want to have some power, end up in TV. But if you want to do film, then pursue film, but just kind of know that you're probably not going to have as much power if you're working on a film versus a television show.
Are you still taking screenwriting classes?
I had taken a class, overall screenplay structure class, and I'm still open to taking more. I'm actually just signed up my friend just gave me a year for a master class, all access pass to master class, which is online classes. I think Aaron Sorkin has one class, and so I'm going to be taking those too. And I think it's okay to, I don't think you should ever stop taking classes. There's always things that you can learn. So, I heard of, I don't know who it was, but there was a successful writer who kept on taking classes, and I think he had won some sort of, maybe it was like an Oscar or something, or maybe he was nominated for one. But I remember hearing stories about, they were told by previous teachers about how the best students kept on taking courses, and kept on learning and figuring out what worked for them.
Yeah, plus you can meet interesting people in those classes, and you can bounce ideas off, or you can see what they're doing and look at something in a new way. And that's the cool part that the online classes don't offer.
True. The networking part. And what I would say is to anybody who's up and coming is that people get promoted way quicker than you might realize. So someone who might not be as established as you in your writing class, might one day become your boss, So, and it might happen really quickly. I mean, it's happened, I've seen it happen, so.
Wondering if just quickly we could talk about the DeLorean, whatever you
Sure.
Okay, so this is your beautiful DeLorean.
1981 DMC-12.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
In excellent condition. It's shiny. It looks great inside. I haven't totally been inside, but it looks really
You'll
cool.
get a ride, don't worry.
Oh, good. Okay. Don't go too fast though.
Okay.
Please. Okay. I get scared at busy intersections.
Right.
But so are you've owned it for a little bit, or?
Well, I bought it in January of last year, of 2017. Bought it on eBay. So I hadn't test driven it, so it was a little bit of a risk, but I decided to kind of pull the trigger on it, and I bought it so that I could rent it out. So that's what I'm doing right now. I set up my side business, carofdreams.com, where people can rent out this DeLorean. And I've already gotten several rentals already, and I started actually this past fall, and the reactions have been really great. Like just seeing people, and their reactions to it, and I think one guy was almost like in tears, So.
Why? Just because he loved the
he
movie
just
so
loved
much?
it. He was just like in awe of the car. So it's definitely a car that gives you an emotional reaction, once you see it for the first time in person.
Yeah, that's true. And how much background information did you do on the actual DeLorean story?
A little bit. I know that it's a very interesting story with John DeLorean. He was a very established figure in the car business, in the car industry, and he decided to make his dream car, but he had some problems funding it, and he ran into a lot of problems, and eventually, like, his dream sort of died in 1983. So, he got busted for trying to do a cocaine deal, allegedly, and yeah, he had a vision of a DeLorean on every corner in the future, and unfortunately that didn't happen. So,
but now fast forward 30 plus years, and it's like collector's item. You said there's only 6,500 left?
Right, there's only about 6,500 left. There's about 9, that's just an estimate too, but there are 9,000 only 9,000 were made, and still like 6,500 out of 9,000, still a pretty good large chunk that are still here, percentage-wise. And it's a really unique car. The guy was kind of a visionary. He, no other car was stainless steel and had the gull-wing doors. He decided to put the engine in the back and the gas in the front, in the trunk, where the trunk is. And he really was an out-of-the-box thinker, and used his experience in the car industry to try to make something new. And this was his passion project.
Do you remember where the DeLorean was made?
I believe it was Northern Ireland, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone that knows if it's not,
right,
they
post
can
in the comments below.
Comments. Please be kind. Okay. What was it about the DeLorean, aside from the fact that it's from Back to the Future? Was it also the story behind it that was fascinating?
Well, actually, no. It was basically because it was in Back to the Future. And actually, when I first saw the movie, I didn't even know that DeLorean was a company. I thought they just made it. They made the car for the film. So I didn't know that until I was well into adulthood, and I eventually learned about the story, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. So I think it'd make a great, biopic. And I know that there's some talk about possibly making a John DeLorean picture. It'd be awesome to write that, but
yeah,
I know it's probably already being made right now, so.
So you talked about being in television, and with some of the jobs, the hours were so long that you really didn't have much of a creative life. Mm-hmm. So you talk about leaving that world and then going and doing your own thing with the writing, your schedule.
Yeah, it was from one extreme to the other. In one situation, I'm coming home late at night, tired, and trying to write and falling asleep after like 3 sentences. And then all of a sudden I have all these hours in the day, and I'm writing, trying to work on my process, trying to figure out what exactly I need to do as a writer to get the best product out there. So I left, I left the TV industry, and I really wasn't sure what type of a writer I was. I thought I was like a writer that really needed to focus on creating those rich characters and developing that and trying to explore. But I started to realize I actually needed more. I was a writer that needed more organization, like more structure, and started to learn more about the structure of screenplays and scenes and everything like that. So,
how was that, having so much time? Because sometimes having too much free time is actually a curse, because you don't structure it and you think, oh, I can just do that tomorrow, and then it's a week later.
Right. Yeah. You kind of expand your days, and all the days kind of seem like one. What I would do is I would actually go to places to write. So I still do this. I go to the library, and that's probably my favorite spot.
Yeah.
But I think, there's some other places that you could go to. You could go. I know that I heard the writer of The Sting actually wrote his screenplay in an airport. Just he had the busy people like shuffling back and forth, and he was able to do it. I've also heard of other writers that it's kind of a little bit more extreme, but I heard of one that actually checks into a hotel, removes all his clothes and gives them to a friend and just says, I gotta finish this screenplay or else I'm gonna be, losing money, and I'm totally like by myself without anything, At some point, the maid's gonna come in, so. That's a little bit more extreme, and
don't try that at the library, by the way.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to try that at the library, but who knows? I mean, maybe. And I heard of one writer who actually wrote on a boat from the U.S. to Asia. It was some sort of boat, and he didn't have any distractions with cell phones or anything like that. And he just needed some time, and there was a deadline too. I'd say like any sort of deadline for certain, at least for me, really does help. But it's got to be like the right deadline. It can't just be any arbitrary deadline. You can't just say by tomorrow. By tomorrow I'm going to be done.
Yeah, and the library is great too, because sometimes you can't really get Wi-Fi that easily unless you like log on to their system and agree to their terms and stuff. So sometimes it's nice to just say, you know what, I'm not going to have Wi-Fi in here.
Right.
Just get stuff done.
Sometimes Wi-Fi is your biggest enemy.
Really,
and,
it is.
Sometimes you could use it to research, but other times you don't want to. You want to kind of shy away from it. I actually got rid of my internet, so I have to go to the gym in my complex to use the internet, and that keeps me a little bit more focused.
Interesting. Oh.
Yeah.
And that was a conscious decision because you knew it distracted you?
Yeah, it was. I didn't want to be researching all the time, and yeah, it really puts me in the zone. And then also, I don't also write only at my place. I go out and stuff. So, but I do a lot of writing outside. So.
Do people ever stop you and ask you what you're doing?
Yeah, people are curious, and I give them a little pitch.
What's your pitch?
Yeah, right now I'm working on a ensemble film. It's a high school drama about bullying and abuse, and there's lots of different characters and lots of storylines that intersect, and yeah, it's kind of like the traffic of bullying, or the crash of bullying, that issue, and it's all set in one location, a school, and yeah, that's what I'm working on right now.
It's interesting because going back to the Future, there's a lot of themes about bullying in there, but it wasn't as prevalent in the 80s movies as it is today, I feel like. Right.
I think stories today kind of focus a little bit more on, it's a little bit more black and white from movies from the past. It's just, the bully is a jerk, But nowadays, people want to know a little bit more about the psychology behind it. A lot of people, for instance, who are bullies have been bullied. And, there's more to it. You can't, one of my writer friends told me something that was very important. And she said, writers should not judge their own characters. Even if it's a bad guy. There's got to be something, redeemable about him or her that, you should kind of get behind, So I always think about that when I write my characters. Right,
sort of just try to show the human side to them, but also why they feel justified.
Yeah, I think you really need to understand where the character is coming from, and you also need to make your characters more three-dimensional. And no one is 100% good or 100% bad. Everybody's kind of in the middle, more so than others. But yeah, and you have to understand where they're coming from. I think the Karate Kid was a movie in the 80s that I remember watching a making of where the guy who played Johnny was like, no, his point of view as an actor was that his character was the main guy, was the main character, and Daniel was the bad guy. Daniel was the guy who was trying to take his girlfriend. Daniel was the guy who was starting all these fights, and he looked at it from that perspective, and that really helped his performance.
Aside from Back to the Future, what are some films that you just love that really inspire you to want to write?
I was just rewatching the movie Her. That was a film that I really loved. It won, Spike Jonze won the Oscar for Best Writing. And I was also watching Eternal Sunshine, The Spotless Mind, and Charlie Kaufman, he also won. And I showed them to a friend who was he had his heart broken, and I showed him these movies, and he really felt more at peace about his situation after watching it. It's because of the great writing, The writing really, spoke some truth to him, So I love movies like that can really just capture, what it is to go through a breakup or something that's really human,
Right, well, isn't that what they say, that, for the best advice to young writers is go out and live life, experience things, get your heart broken.
Right.
Even though it doesn't sound fun, but...
Yeah, but it's that struggle or that pain that, makes you create something great, Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if you get your heart broken, turn that story into some sort of literature.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if Biff could write a screenplay. If so, what it would be about.
Right, yeah, I don't know.
All the people in his way, maybe.
Well, Hollywood better not produce it. Back to the Future remake with Biff as the main character. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually said he was a really nice guy in person. So.
That's what I heard too, in the making of. Thomas Wilson was really funny too. Really funny, really nice. So.
Well, especially now since you've kind of gotten rid of your Wi-Fi, how much time do you spend writing? How many days? How many hours?
It really does depend. It's usually every day, or every writer should try to write something every day. So I try to do it every day, and I've gone from one extreme to the other. I've gone from, I have 10 minutes left in the day, let me just jot down something, to spending an entire day focused on developing my story and just staying in and just trying to meet that deadline. But yeah, usually right now it's I'd probably say it's a couple hours a day.
A couple hours.
Yeah, but you can't spend living both extremes. You kind of have to meet somewhere in the middle. You kind of have to. Breaks are good. Running, doing some sort of exercise, doing some sort of errand, going in the shower. That's when the best ideas come.
So do you love writing as much as you thought you would? Because I know when someone has a full-time job, the thought of free time is so appealing.
Right.
And then once you get it, sometimes it's hard to know what to do with yourself. So do you love writing as much as sort of you romanticized before you left the TV world?
Absolutely. I really feel fulfilled in that I'm doing what I want to do, even though, I haven't made it yet. I'm focused on, pursuing the stories that I want to tell, and I've lived where, I've lived the life where I wasn't even trying. I was making the money, but I wasn't, I was working on someone else's project, and that's just a terrible feeling, knowing that you're not even trying. You're leaving a lot of time out for someone else, and you could be using that time for yourself. So, I haven't made it yet, but I really do feel like I'm doing the right thing. So,
what does making it look like?
Well, making it looks like hopefully, basically making the films that I want to make, and raising the money independently and producing those films and directing them and continuing to do that over and over again, and maybe showing it at a film festival, and maybe someday selling those films to a production company, and watching a movie with an audience that I made, that I was, happy with.
What do you think about the pressure that millennials face to not only make it, which means have what they want to do be their job, how they get money, but also then there's this extra pressure of social media where they have to be Instagram famous or whatever, Tumblr famous. They have to have all these followers. So, because that's a new element to making it that wasn't around a decade ago.
Yeah, I guess, nowadays there are all these platforms where people are getting on them so early, where their view of success is how others view them. So, I know, for instance, there are people on Instagram who take these beautiful pictures, but it takes like 1,000,000 takes to make that picture look good, and they don't even look. I've seen some people, they don't even look happy taking them, but their life looks so good on Instagram, and it's something that as a writer you really have to, know yourself. You have to, as an artist, you have to create something and ask yourself, am I fulfilled with that? Is this what I want to put out into the world? And just put it out there. And not everybody's going to like it. So you have to be okay with that. Not everybody's going to like your scene in scene writing class. Not everybody's going to like your movie. And I really feel like sometimes the younger generation, they don't really know this because, it's almost like how many likes or how many subscribers or followers you have is who you are. And no, that's, who you are is how you feel about your content that you put out there. So that's kind of what I wanted to, tell anybody who was younger than me, on Instagram. So.
Do you think there's a pressure to be putting out all these fun photos? So not only be great at as being a writer and be doing stuff, but also then the pressure to be putting out all these photos where, yeah, here I'm in Vail with all my and I see that and I wonder how people must feel that pressure that are after college, just getting out, like, oh, I need to keep up, so because everybody else puts those out.
Yeah, there definitely is pressure, not just for like, oh, look at how good my life is, but also, even if you don't care about that stuff, nowadays film festivals look at audience. If your film does not have an audience already, and once you get into a film festival, that'll affect sales. That'll affect how many people want to make offers to you. So there's all of a sudden pressure to create some sort of audience for your film before it even gets shown. And on top of that, it's like then you feel like I only have 100 likes. How bad does my script sucks or my movie sucks based on this reaction here. But you kind of have to focus on am I real? In my opinion, you have to focus on, am I really making what I really want to make? Am I happy with it? As long as you're happy with it, I think, you should be happy with it first and then put it out into the world. You shouldn't, try to cater to what the world wants if you want to kind of go that route as an artist.
Do you think there's a story structure that professionals use?
I think it's different for everybody. I don't think there's one story structure that fits everything. A lot of people talk about 3-act structure, and I kind of dog on it a little bit because I think it really oversimplifies everything. And there are some books that I won't name that say that you need to have this happen on this page, and it's very strict. I think that just as long as you have a main character that you, for some reason, really care about, and there's conflict present, and that conflict escalates and keeps on escalating, and you're still engaged as an audience member, that's what people, that's what the professional writers, use. But it's in terms of like a one structure, I don't really believe that there is only one out there.
Well, I know when just watching Back to the Future and doing the script analysis with you, you know, different beats didn't seem like they were being met exactly when some of these, you know, story structure experts say they should. But, you know, it still works. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, whatever really helps you as a writer. I mean, if it does help you, I mean, I know Back to the Future really, you know, it does fit into that 3-act structure. But I would just warn against some people, you know, some writers think that it's like screenwriting religion, and I would just say that, you know, there are plenty of films that don't fit 3-act structure.
Do you find taking the online screenwriting classes helpful?
Well, I actually haven't signed up for that yet.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
It was a Christmas gift. Yeah,
That's
Christmas
a nice
gift that
friend.
you know, I've been procrastinating on. But yeah, classes, you know, any type of class really helps. And you know, I've taken classes where, you know, we did it like a live chat or a live video feed. And that, you know, that's the same thing too. You know, it's you know, as long as you're learning every week, I think, you know, it's definitely worthwhile to take classes. If you're taking an entire class and you're still questioning the teacher and maybe you're not sure if you've grown, then that's probably a class that, you know, you probably don't want to take again, which I've taken that class, so.
Is that when there's too many study groups? You know how when they like, okay guys, I'm just gonna have you go in groups, and you're like, no, I wanna listen to you talk.
Well, I haven't taken that one,
okay.
But yeah, I've definitely taken classes where with, you know, one teacher I'm not gonna mention,
right.
But you know, many years ago, I could just tell from everybody that they weren't really growing, and you know, that's unfortunate. And I just remember he would just draw a big line on the chalkboard every class, you know, talking about inciting incident and everything like that.
Interesting.
That's really all I got out of the class, so yeah. Unfortunately.
I know the best classes for me, and I didn't take them really on writing, but were just when the teacher was so entertaining and so interesting, you could just sit there and the 3 hours would just go by like that. And there were a few teachers like that where they were just their own show. And that to me, you were just lost in that class. Yeah,
I know, yeah, one of my teachers, he definitely knew how to entertain, and he would put that into his class. And I mean, I just remember every time we'd be so interested, and then at the perfect moment he'd say, and I'll tell you after the break. And we'd take, you know, a 10-minute bathroom break or whatever, and we'd be like so psyched to learn about what he wanted to teach. So, you know, right. People who know how to do that, they definitely know something about telling a story, about the rhythm of storytelling.
And a lot of them talk about their own lives. The teacher that I'm referring to, I mean, he told us some, you know, deep, dark stuff about wanting to take his own life and coming back from that and all this stuff. And I mean, we were just riveted in this class, and he really just laid it all out there. And it was just, yeah. Yeah,
something about writers is that I feel like writers have to be, well, first of all, they've probably gone through a lot. They probably have a lot to say. And also, they have to be honest. You know, they got to be honest with their motivations the characters make, and they're usually people who are just trying to be honest with everything. And being honest is, like, you kind of have to practice that as a writer. So, yeah, good for him.
You mentioned earlier that you took a scene writing class.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things that you learned, or maybe you received feedback, like if you wrote a scene and showed it to the rest of the class, or the teacher, and then got these notes? What were they?
Well, I'd probably say the biggest thing that I learned was that my gut and how I feel about a scene and how well it will do is usually pretty off, pretty inaccurate. So I'd walk into class sometimes feeling super confident that everything was super clear and engaging in my scene. And then people would have questions, or they had problems with, you know, and I was like, and I'd listen to that. And then after I'd hear them speak, I'd be like, oh, actually, yeah, you know, why did I feel so confident? And then there are other times when I remember my teacher told me, forget everything I said, just write the scene, just write it out, do it sloppy, whatever. And I did it kind of sloppy, and I was like, oh, this is gonna get torn up in class. This is going to be the worst scene ever. And then everybody had all these great things to say. So your gut as a writer, sometimes when you're learning, might be a little bit off. And yeah, I noticed that that my writing would improve once my gut would be in check with everybody else. So.
Were you just like in the scene with Marty McFly, or with George McFly, sorry, where he's writing, and you can see he's very passionate about it, but he doesn't want to show it to anybody, and he says, because I don't want anyone to criticize it. Mm-hmm. How was it for you to show your writing to the class?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I mean, I was, when my teacher picked out that scene, it was terrifying, and it was it was a successful scene. I mean, I felt pretty good about it too. It was the one time I felt good, and it would actually turn out to be okay. And I was super nervous. But as a writer, you have to practice that. You have to get your work out there, and you have to know that not everybody's going to like it. Even the whole thing with I was just saying about feeling super confident about it. That all came from me thinking. I was thinking about what other people would think about it, not asking myself, how did I feel about my own thing that I wrote? Really, I just feel like, it's just something that you have to practice, and you have to know that it's not going to get a reaction. It's okay if it doesn't get everybody in the class, loves it. It's okay.
I think too, I like it when people in the class are way better than me, because it gives me something to aspire to. And it doesn't matter if they're way younger or not. It's just nice to know, wow, okay, that's possible. Yeah, I like how that person worded that, and I like what they're saying, and then it kind of gives me something to kind of set a goal for.
And so it rubs off on you a little bit?
Yeah. Because sometimes if I'm not happy with something, then I just want to see other people that are, I've taken classes where I was just sort of totally humbled by how great everyone was, and it's actually kind of nice to listen to other people read, and people that they were so quiet in class, and you would never expect that to come from them, and you were like, wow, that's brilliant. Mm-hmm. And otherwise they were so unassuming, they didn't want to be noticed, they just were, and then they would write, and you were like, that's amazing, and they didn't think so. Mm.
Yeah, it's good to take those classes where you feel like you want to improve. You have a big learning curve that you want to go through, but I've also taken classes where they were a little more basic, and I was actually one of the better writers, and those classes are good too, because it shows you how far you've come. So yeah, I think taking classes as long as it's with a good teacher is good. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I miss those classes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Seems like now stuff is too online, and I miss that.
Right.
Sitting in the classroom and listening to the teacher. So it's.
Well, just watch the DVD commentary that we did. That's all
okay.
you need.
Okay,
if you're a
there
writer.
you go.